Anthony Fauci gets another criminal referral from Rand Paul, this one for lying to the American people. Not a big surprise here. What is a surprise is this new email that came out. This was previously redacted. Now it has been unredacted, and it is quite revealing. It says that Anthony Fauci and some of his so-called scientists kind of knew more than they were letting on about the origin of the COVID virus. Maybe it did come from a lab. That's what the email says. And so Rand Paul communicated this referral over on Twitter. He said, all right, here we go. I referred Anthony Fauci to the DOJ again for lying to Congress when he denied the National Institutes of Health was funding gain-of-function research in Wuhan. Brought him into Congress. He lied to Congress. Now there should be repercussions for that. We know they're prosecuting their political enemies in the form of Donald Trump and others, but they're not prosecuting people who are doing their bidding. Here, this story came from the Daily Mail, says Anthony Fauci is accused of perjury. Former White House doctor lied under oath about the funding of gain-of-function research in China. Might have started the pandemic, according to Rand Paul. Daily Mail reveals now that Senator Rand Paul wrote to Attorney General Merrick Garland last week calling for an investigation into whether Fauci, who's 82 now, committed perjury when he testified in front of the Senate in 2021. Fauci was the former director of the NIAID, but newly released emails show that Fauci acknowledged that scientists in Wuhan are, quote, known to have been working on gain-of-function experiments to determine that molecular mechanisms may be associated or adapting to human infection. Let's take a look at what the email says. You can see this was sent on February 1st, 2020 from Anthony Fauci to Garrett Grigsby and others. The subject is follow-up, and Francis Collins also made it on this email. Sent by Fauci. You can see best regards from Tony. He says, okay, everybody. Folks, the call with Jeremy Farrar from Wellcome Trust went very well. Francis Collins joined, and there were several highly credible scientists, including in addition to the two that I spoke with last night, on the call with expertise in evolutionary biology. One point to make clear, and this was brought up on a task force call, most of the rumors that are going around relate to the paper by an Indian group saying that there are HIV gene sequences inserted into the virus. Now, all of the scientists on our call felt that this was not credible, and they dismissed it as they, the two, did last night. So just to be clear, this was a rumor and a theory, and so they dismissed that there were some insertion of anything strange into the virus. And so this is not medical advice or medical information. This was a theory that was being discussed, and it has been dismissed. This is not what they were concerned about, says Fauci. They were concerned about the fact that upon viewing the sequences of several isolates in the nCoV virus, there were mutations in the virus that would most unusual to have evolved naturally in the bats. Mutations most unusual to have evolved naturally. And that there was a suspicion that this mutation was intentionally inserted. The suspicion was heightened by the fact that scientists in Wuhan University are known to have been working on gain-of-function experiments, this is Fauci writing, to determine the molecular mechanisms associated with bat viruses adapting to human infection, and the outbreak originated in Wuhan. Well, that's interesting. Sounds like Fauci knows that there actually was gain-of-function experiments happening, and he had a lot of words with Rand Paul over what that meant. Well, that doesn't mean what you think it means, and respectfully, Senator, you don't know what you're talking about with his little head bob. And so this was all redacted, and they suppressed the idea that this came from a lab, but you can see here he's openly talking about the idea that this might have come from a lab. He says, upon considerable discussion, some of the scientists felt more strongly about this possibility, but the others felt differently. They felt it was entirely conceivable that this could have evolved naturally, even though these mutations have never been seen in a bat virus before. It could be, but we've never seen it before. Yeah, but it could. I guess that's true. The reasons for each side of the argument are too complicated to bother you with. It's sciencey stuff. Just trust me. Bottom line is that they all agreed with my strong suggestion to gather an even larger group under the auspices of an internationally credible organization. Even larger group, so that we can expand this out into more bureaucracy and more cover, and defray any accountability and responsibility for it. After some discussion, they all felt that the World Health Organization would be the most appropriate convener of such a group, and that the scientific experts be broadly representative of the global scientific community so that they can stop this from evolving. Jeremy Farrar and Francis Collins will contact Tedros and ask him to do this. They hope to initiate this in the next day or so. They pass no judgment at all at this point, and they feel that the group's mandate should be, quote, what are the evolutionary origins of COVE? Important for future risk assessments and understanding this. In this way, there is no assumption of foul play or guilt on anyone's part, especially mine, okay? There is no assumption of foul play, especially on my part. We're clear. And merely an intense scientific look at the evolutionary origins of the virus. Where that leads remain to be seen. Happy to chat with any of you about this. Best regards. So that whole thing was basically redacted, and it has now been unredacted. They're saying that perjury is a federal offense, carries up to 5 years in prison. The emails show that Fauci was aware of gain of function going on in the lab. He never admitted, though, that they funded it. But the GAO determined last month that they did receive NIH funding there at Wuhan, and Senator Rand Paul sent the letter over to Garland saying, you've got to charge this guy. He is directly lying to us. At the hearing in July, Fauci stated that the NIH has never and does not now fund gain-of-function research. But yet, gain-of-function research was done entirely at Wuhan and was funded by NIH. Rand Paul has cited multiple documents about it. And so we've covered that here at length as we've been trying to make sure these people be held accountable. This is another House representative named Tim Burchett. He says there's enough evidence here for Fauci that he needs to be charged with a felony.
Seconds. What do you want to do about Fauci?
He needs to go. In fact, he did lie. He needs to be brought up on those charges. And we need to find out why American taxpayers are paying to create a disease that, according to some Democrats, almost wiped out civilization. And why are we still paying this guy $400,000+? We need to pop him good and hang a felony on him is what we need to do. People lost their lives because of this nonsense. And they are playing God. They took a virus and they altered it. He claimed they didn't. My friend Rand Paul busted him.
Busted. So he does need to be popped with a felony peacefully, and just like they're popping other people with felonies like Trump. So why don't they pop Anthony Fauci with a felony and charge him for lying to Congress amongst his other crimes? But did you hear Tim Burchett say something interesting there? That they're still paying Anthony Fauci? We thought he retired some time ago. Kind of, but not really. He still has a government taxpayer-funded limo and security service.
Around-the-clock security provided by the U.S. Marshals. That means they station someone outside his house. The limousines take him wherever he needs to go to the airport. Why, if he's not in government anymore, would he get this?
So we've been hearing these rumors. He announced his retirement, and then somebody said, oh, well, he still comes into the office periodically, and he still has his security detail. And we're like, how come? He's no longer working. So we asked HHS early in the summer, we said, is he still working? And does he have this limo? And does he have a driver? And does he have a security detail? Well, HHS actually came back to us and said they haven't been paying for it since January. But then we discovered that Fox did a Freedom of Information Act, and a judge forced them to say that, well, HHS wasn't directly funding it. The U.S. Marshals were funding it. So can you imagine, we asked the government, are you funding his limo and his driver and his security detail? And they say, oh, we're not doing it. Oh, but somebody else is doing it, and then we're reimbursing them. So it's a terrible example of the government lying to its representatives and to the people. But also, why is a retired guy? The only retired official I know of that gets this kind of treatment is a former president. So I have no idea why this bureaucrat still has a limo driver, security detail, and we want to know, does he still get legal representation? Because I think he may need that eventually, but he's a rich man. His wealth increased by 30% during the pandemic. I think he ought to pay for his own security detail and his own legal defense.
And former presidents are also getting indicted now. So if he's also getting continuing care, he might also get an indictment, just like Trump. So very curious thing that's happening. We'll see if these people are held accountable for their direct lies to us. I mean, he can tell us where it came from, right? If he's being open and honest, unless he's got some reason to hide it from us, which might be because he was involved in it. And now they're all trying to cover it up. And Rand Paul has been on this from the very beginning. Hopefully there is accountability for these people who did what they did to us so that it doesn't happen again.